All right, we are live. Welcome, everybody. My name is Olasco Boston. I am your lovely host. We're part of AfroDesiaCity, which is the production company director. Today, we have a very special guest for our month Best of Me, which is called. And I started this to find a way to engage with artists and entrepreneurs and just wanted to have conversations because we know as we are doing this COVID-19, we got to find ways to make things happen and make things vibrant. So Niambe McIntosh would be our featured guest this afternoon. So before I bring her online, I definitely want to just talk about who she is a little bit. And, as we go forward there, she'll talk a little bit more about herself. And we're also celebrating Black Music Month as we end towards that. Just want to make sure that this highlights, because we are in July. So we're not celebrating Independence Day. We're celebrating the 14 days after, well, now 16 days after Juneteenth. So as I go along, we're going to introduce Niambe McIntosh. So over the last several years, Niambe McIntosh is the youngest child of the revolutionary musician and actress Peter Tosh. Oh yes, has stepped up to mantle and carry her father's message and legacy. A Renaissance woman, she serves many roles, including the head of Peter Tosh, estate and brand, managing member of Tosh Holdings LLC, board chairperson for the Peter Tosh Foundation LDT, and president of PT Capital LLC. So as you can see, she's very busy. She was born in Kingston, Jamaica, raised in Boston, Massachusetts. Woo woo. McIntosh has come to call both home. She received a bachelor's degree in engineering and enjoyed a successful career in the field during her early 20s. However, her passion for working with children of all ages led her to switch gears and become an educator. Attaining her master's in education, she spent early decade working in Boston public school system as a high school mathematics and special education teacher. During this time, Niambe was instrumental in the planning and development of Peter Tosh Museum, which opened in 2016, and is a national landmark edifice in Kingston, Jamaica, dedicated to the preservation of her father's legacy. Additionally, McIntosh and her family founded the Peter Tosh Foundation in 2017 to serve as the vehicle for the realization of her father's dream. Niambe's fire for advocacy also stems from a family crisis in February of 2017, on which her brother, Jawari McIntosh, which is a musician and cannabis activist, was brutally attacked while incarcerated for cannabis possession. She moved to New Jersey to be by his side during a near fatal death, well, almost close death, experience, which compelled her to raise awareness for the dire conditions faced by prisoners, as we're going through today with police brutality. It was needed in prison reform and a necessity for legalization of cannabis nationwide. Beyond family and business, McIntosh also serves on the board of directors for nonprofit cannabis advocacy organization, Minorities for Medical Marijuana, which focuses on public policy, business development, patient education, and social justice as it pertains to minority issues in cannabis industry. McIntosh is a spokesperson for the organization's Project Clean Slate, which provides record expungements and wraparound services for individuals with cannabis arrests. Niambe McIntosh is unquestionably cut from the same cloth as her father, not yet living in his shadows. Instead, she has developed her own identity while breathing new life into what we call. So, further ado, I'm going to bring this wonderful lady on with us, and we're going to have a great conversation for this afternoon. So please, let's give a round of applause for Miss Niambe McIntosh. Welcome.
Thank you. That was awesome. Thank you so very much for having me, Olasco, and thanks for your commitment to your webcast, your podcast, because I know that that's a major one and takes a lot of dedication. So we need as many outlets telling our story and our narrative as possible. So thank you.
Yes, and I am having a pleasure to have you on with me this afternoon. So we're basically broadcasting, webcasting, whatever you want to call it, out here in Martha's Vineyard, which is I know is one of your lovely go-to home places. And right now I'm taking a vacay, so we're gonna do what it do. So this is my background of
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, my mom lives out there. She's been out there for about 15 years or so, and she really introduced me to the island. My brother, actually, Jawara, who you spoke about, he first performed when he started his music career. That's where he first performed in Martha's Vineyard. So yeah, there's a lot of ties to the island.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, this is my favorite spot too. So I am continuing to learn more and more what's out here, what's out there. It's becoming more of our home and what's out there, all the history that how we people of color or Black people have like migrated here and worked hard to create a family, and more of like a vacation home and excursions for folks who want to come here and learn more in a peaceful manner.
Yep.
Yeah. But before we get into that, we should just, if you want to tell the people more about yourself. I know I gave like a nice structured intro, but we're here in flesh on screen. So yes, let people hear who you are and tap in.
Yeah, you've covered a lot. I am the head of the Peter Tosh Foundation and brand and legacy, and in that capacity, I am constantly looking for new opportunities to carry on the legacy. As you mentioned, we did open up the Peter Tosh Museum in Kingston, Jamaica, which is now a place where anyone can go to learn about his legacy and his contribution to the world, which is super awesome. And we're working on a play, we're working on a motion picture, working on a documentary, and always looking to grow the brand. We also are looking to launch our CBD line of products this year, called Seen by Peter Tosh, as he was the visionary who advocated for its legalization many years ago. And so it's a vision that he has long before seen before, it's time. And so I do have my hands full, and also Jawara, who suffered a traumatic brain injury. Due to his injuries, I am a full-time caretaker for him. He lives with me, and I actually moved outside of Boston, and now we're in Quincy. So that's another. I have and I'm a mom, so a ton of full-time jobs, and somehow through the grace of the Almighty and everything kind of falling into play, I'm able to manage it all. So
yes, well, I'll definitely shoot my blessings to you, because you gotta do what you gotta do. You're this living icon of your family, of your father, and that's awesome. That's why it attracted me to, it's like, I have to get you on this interview, because it's like, I don't think a lot of people know that you exist and you live here, or maybe you're on that work. So it's just great to just talk with people who are just doing that work, and people don't know what you're going through until you tell your story.
Exactly. Yeah, I was born in Jamaica. As you said, I came here from when I was very young, 3 or 4 years old. I've gone through Boston public schools. That was my experience. Probably went to 6 different elementary schools in Boston, and then went to West City on a Hill Charter School, and graduated from West Roxbury High School. And then, as you mentioned, Wentworth Institute of Technology, and then Boston, UMass Boston, to get my master's in education. So very much a Boston native, and I'm back and forth to Jamaica often. We actually hold a Peter Tosh Music Festival every year around his birthday in October, and so both have the ties in both places.
Yes, and I feel like that's a great way to create some kind of form of tourism to make it more bigger. That's what I studied in undergrad, and it's just so amazing that there's so many movements you can utilize to just build that, and you don't even know that you're doing it. You're just doing it.
Right. So true.
Yeah. So you know what? I wanted to find out, because the fact that you have so many hats, like, what art do you most identify with? Like, what will make you your inner you of like what that you want to like tell people?
What art music definitely is in my blood. Music is what keeps me going. I don't consider myself a musician. I haven't learned to sing. I'm not a singer. I don't consider myself a singer. I was a DJ at a point in time, and so I've always, I've always loved music to kind of help, build my spirit. And with all that I do, and even during my toughest times, it's music that can help give me some direction and ground me and keep my spirits high. So I feel like music is the art form that I just love.
I mean, that's amazing because music does cure everything.
It really does. Yeah. My father, there's an interview of him saying that because music used to be a tool to educate it, but he was like, if music can have people forget about, their woes and their troubles and be used as a tool of an awakening, he's like, then you can dance to your awakening. And a beautiful, concept. If we actually had more music that was more positive and used for what it used to be used for, is just kind of carry on stories and educate people. And so that's the power of music, that you can just be singing something and kind of be learning at the same time.
True. I cook when when I'm cooking, I'm dancing.
Yep.
So, I'm like, you gotta be happy about something. I was like, yeah, because food and music, they just come out, But you know what? I'm curious, like, to be the youngest daughter, how does that feel? Is that a lot of pressure on you to carry his legacy? Like, how do you manage that?
Well, I'm the youngest of 10. It was only Jawara is the only one from my mom, so we share the same mom. And then the oldest is maybe, I'm 38. So the oldest is maybe 12 to 15 years older than I. And I kind of just fell into my lap. There were other siblings that were kind of interested in this position and played it to some capacity, but they were always, it's two of my older brothers. I think the male ego can get in the way of a lot of things. And so I stepped in and was like, look, I don't have any ego. I just want to do what's right, and people just, all of my siblings was like, that's a great idea. Like, Niambe, you should do it. And and when you're the daughter of a musician and not in music, you don't necessarily, you kind of don't even know what's yours. It was actually controlled by a public administrator. My father's estate was controlled by a public administrator up until 2009, and my father died in 1987. And so I turned 18 in 1999, but it took, that many years for us to understand that this is our legacy that we need to take a hold of and control. And so it just, took its time, but it's something that I'm honored to do. And I enjoy it. It doesn't feel like pressure. It just almost, it's like it almost feels like destiny, feels like I'm kind of driven. And every time I like the paths just open up in a way where when things are right, that it's a little bit easier. It's not easy, but certain things just seem to work out when you hit a brick wall. You're like, oh, that's brick wall is because I'm not supposed to go that way. I'm actually supposed to go, this way. And I just try to trust the journey and trust the process. And it's really how I live my life, is because this is unprecedented. There's not too many people running in a state, that you can be like, oh, they're doing this, so let me tap into them. I recently did meet the Marleys, Sadella Marley, who runs her dad's estate. And it was interesting to finally connect with her and see that she, at a very, very different scale, because they're the Marleys. But doing some of the same things that I do. And so that was pretty cool. But ultimately, this whole journey has just been through the School of Hard Knocks and figuring things out and learning who's a part of your team and who doesn't need to be a part of your team. and the liberation that comes with firing people and moving on and learning the whole way and understanding that every step, even when you take a wrong turn, you're meant to go down that path to learn from it so that you can end up on the right path.
Right. I appreciate you sharing that, because what I'm noticing, especially with our generation, we talk about all this history of how we're like building equity, and especially in certain neighborhoods that are lacking that. Example, Nubian Square. But then you have a lot of families who carry the legacy as you, who have businesses. And it's like, okay, it might not be your interest, but it is your interest to carry that legacy on your family, because you don't know where that would take you. Exactly. Or what it would do. So I find I hear, and I have a lot of friends who are like, no, I don't want to do that. And then their parents have no choice but to sell the business. And it's like, then you get mad when gentrifiers come in and they're like, oh, okay, this was it was prime real estate then, and it was always going to be prime real estate. So that's why. So if anybody's listening to this, if you have a family business, please do your best to try to carry that on. Don't say you don't want to do it, whether it's real estate, restaurant. We are the ones in the future to carry it on so we can make it very fashionable in our own liking, because we are going through a new generation. So I just want to thank you for that, because I think our generation needs to hear that, even the younger ones, because people feel like, oh, I don't need to go to school. I can always find a way to become rich or famous through social media.
Right. Yeah, I think that the education is the most important, and also understanding the like rules of scalability. Because right now my team is we have a manager that helps manage the estate and look for different opportunities. And then I have a niece who stepped in, who's been a godsend, stepped in a few years ago. And she's sharp. She's a couple of years younger than I am, a few years younger than I am. But that core is really what allows me to be able to do what I do. She's the like A-type, emails, time, scheduler, correspondence. And then I consider myself more of the visionary. But having that team, I think, is also very important. But then also understanding, like, how do you then scale out? How do you hire people to do the things that you shouldn't be spending your time doing, so that you can figure out new opportunities to monetize? Because a lot of people can find themselves doing some of the work that doesn't necessarily pay the big bills. And so it does take time, and it does take dedication, but it does take you kind of getting out of your comfort zone, really, to find new opportunities for that.
And that's good. And folks need to know that it's okay to come out of your comfort zone, because that's what's going to help you learn how to deal with challenges. And just thinking of that, it's like, when did you decide? Because you said you was an educator, and it's fascinating how you went from being a teacher and then going full time into just, investing into your family's business. So like, how did you figure like that was the right time to do that?
It actually happened with Jawara. And so he was, his attack happened in 2017. And I was torn between wanting to stay in education, because I do love to connect with young people. I understand the importance of what role educators play, because one educator can inspire 30 children or 40 children or 100 children. And then those children then take those gems and then go off into the world and plant those seeds. And I think that education is the most, educators should be well compensated. But it was understanding that the Boston public school system isn't necessarily, it wasn't a good balance, because I knew that I had to take care of my brother. I knew that I had to kind of be his voice, and take on it. I just felt it was this kind of pressure, like I had to choose family. Family is the most important to me. And even if different family members don't understand that, I understand the value of making sure that home is taken care of. And so I quit teaching. My boss, I remember my boss not necessarily understanding what was going on at home. Just was like, hey, Niambe, you know, what extra responsibilities after like 3 months after being in the ICU with my brother and then finally coming back to work, you know, what extra responsibilities are you going to be doing, you know, the upcoming year? And I'm just like, I'm going to try to keep my sanity, woman.
like, what kind of question is that?
Like, I just got out of a traumatic situation. And I can talk more about that because that is an experience that was life-changing, you know? And so I realized that it was important for me to not only focus on my brother, but also that allowed me to then say, you know what, I'm just going to do my family business generally full-time. And I was kind of forced, and I appreciate where I am now. You know, I appreciate being able to kind of say, I'm gonna just figure this shit out.
Right.
You know, I don't know how this is gonna be. That there was that level of security that came with being an educator. Boston's one of the highest paying cities in Massachusetts, and so it came with an abundance of you know, benefits, healthcare and dental care and eye care and all those things. But I took the risk and I didn't look back, but figured things out each step of the way. So,
wow, yeah. That's amazing. I'm like, I see me and you and me and us in a pot. Like,
right.
It's interesting how you just can just be like, all right, enough is enough. This is what I got to do. This is my priorities, and not look back and feel like, oh, I made a mistake. And I think that's a lot that affects a lot of people. They think like, oh, I need to have a direction. I mean, yes, which is true, but you know, a direction that makes you feel good because you are doing the work. And if you don't have that energy and that right mindset, it's not going to carry. It's just going to be a tool of a hobby, I guess you would
exactly. Say. And a lot of people, what they don't realize is that it's better to take the risk and find out if it's right for you versus to live with regrets. I can always go back to teaching. It's not going anywhere. You know, a lot of people, if you walk mentally through like the worst case scenarios, usually the worst case scenario is you get a job. You know, you end up getting broke. You can't figure things out. You're like, okay, I guess I need to I guess this avenue didn't work. Let me go back to getting some security. And then you continue on the journey of figuring things out and maybe finding another opportunity that allows you to kind of live your passion. But a lot of people kind of live with fear and use the influence of other people expressing their fears of you. You know, oh, maybe what if this doesn't happen? Or what if you don't, you know, what about health insurance? What about your child? What about this? What about that? And at the end of the day, the worst case scenario is that most people are of sound mind and body and they'll figure it out. You just figure it out when you get there. But it's the mental stress that people can create, you know, right. that really end up being the barriers. I'm exhausted most times, but I tell people I was exhausted teaching. I was tired.
I was tired too.
Tired.
I don't know how you
and so I'm just tired doing a different passion. And so it's not, you know, and I don't regret being tired now. I was tired then when I was doing my passion in education, and I'm tired now. So it's no different. It's how do you want to spend your time, you know, and would you rather spend it kind of learning through the School of Hard Knocks? Would you rather spend it with that security? Some people are 100% content with just like, I need the security. I like to know what's going to happen tomorrow. And then some people are willing to kind of take that risk and say, I need to at least know if I could do this on my own, if I can live my passion. So,
right. And some people don't understand that.
Yeah.
It's only you internal that would get that.
Yes. Exactly. And so sometimes you got to block out the naysayers. Even in caretaking for my brother, there's been times when I did a lot of holistic research, and now I pretty much run a holistic medical center, you know, with one patient. And anybody that comes into the space that he's in with the support of our mom, who's an organizer. So, and then I'm an educator. So both, it's like, okay, creating this environment where the energy is positive, and also it's very functional. It's like, okay, when I wake up at 11 o'clock at night to take care of him, and I don't feel like doing like anything, what system can I create to make this more functional? So I'm always evaluating myself, and what are my barriers, and then changing my environment to make sure that it's more functional for me, so that I can be as productive as possible. So
yes, and then I was about to segue, like, what would be your where do you get your inspiration? Like,
yeah, yeah, it's definitely the music. Is what keeps me going, but a lot of times I go back and listen to some of my father's interviews. He passed away when I was 5 years old.
Wow.
He was actually murdered. People may or may not know that.
Wow. I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't actually.
In 1987, he was at his home. It was said to be an attempted robbery, but my father was very, very political. And most people that know him felt as though it was an assassination. And so I didn't have a strong relationship with him. I didn't grow up with him. So a lot of the messages and the teaching I get from him is from other people. And it's from, watching his interviews on YouTube or looking back at pictures. And so he inspires me a lot to kind of keep on, and with carrying on his legacy, I always make sure, like, go back to his words, go back to his music to make sure that I'm pushing in the right direction.
That's beautiful. Because I was going to say, like, how does it make you feel? I know sometimes when it's like, oh, you're the daughter of someone that's been so politically radical, and it's just like, and then you have to endure and hear other conversations of people saying, yes, your father was like this, you should follow this and that. And it's just like, thank you. I mean, even if, because my background, I'm Nigerian, so it's like the whole village feel like they can tell you what to do or tell you how to live your life. Mm-hmm. And all you do and say is like, thank you, mom, thank you, son, thank you. I understand, I hear it, it's in here, but at the same time, I'm going to implement my own and live my own life and just move what I need to do. So I'm like, how do you handle those challenges? Because, everybody probably feels they have the best for you, but you are the only one who knows the best of you.
Exactly. I trust my instincts, and I also and I try to make sure I articulate what the goal is for everyone. Like, okay, this is what I think is important for us to keep at our core in all the decisions that we make. Obviously, when you are trying to monetize a brand, anytime you monetize, it's like you're already going against the grain. It's like, oh well, you're doing business with these people, and they're not Black owned, or they're not ran by, how is that? Now you're making sure you're giving back to the community. Are you making sure that you're carrying on the legacy with integrity? And so there's always gonna be naysayers. I think that you have to. I think that when you are political, sometimes we can be so political that it devastates our monetization. And so I think that it's important that we have to build our foundation so that we can do more of the work. And so some people, I had a friend compare like Nina Simone and like Beyonce. Nina Simone was very political, was very outward with her beliefs, and maybe didn't become as mainstream as like a Beyonce, who built up her war chest and build up her financial assets. And then once kind of having those, she has her foundation. Her foundation is in tons of different countries. I had to Google her because I don't follow pop culture, but I Googled and then was like, oh, wow. I was very impressed to see all of the countries that her foundation was in, and feeding the hungry, and school supplies, and doing major work, but it takes you to make decisions that can kind of help you financially, first. And I have this family that's always like, oh, are you selling out? Don't sell out. There's always that fear of selling out. And I think as Black people on this continent that have been oppressed for so long, I've come to the understanding that there is no such thing. We all just literally do our best, and under oppression and misinformation and misguidance and the propaganda that has been against our culture, our identity, even the most ignorant of us, is doing their best with what they were, with the cards they were given, and we have to be a lot more understanding that so many of us have had so many different experiences, and it's not helpful to be so judgmental, that we have a very judgmental culture, especially on social media. People are quick to troll and, oh, you should be, doing that. But, especially being a special educator has helped me to understand of high school students. I'm like, these high school students that have behavioral issues, that have emotional issues, I'm like, they're 1 year away from being an adult who's going to now be judged as an adult, who never really got the support that they needed, who never really got the education that they needed, who never really got the therapy that they needed, or the education, and so I just trust the judgment. I trust that if something's not meant to work out, I learn from it, and then I keep pushing. Like, you can't know. There's no way you can know what decision is right until you do it. And so you just got to do it. And if it's the wrong decision, good. I've learned now that that's the wrong decision. Now I want to try, this way, but you got to just keep it pushing at the end of the day. So when people are there saying their comments and their critique, you just, like you said, it's like, thank you. Thank you very much for your opinion.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I keep pushing. Yeah.
Yes, you got to keep pushing. I mean, that's the only thing you can do. And then sometimes you might have to take yourself offline just to digress and just be like, okay, I need time for myself, and so I can be the better me.
Yep.
And I mean, especially you working in a state and all these other hats. I mean, now we're, within this COVID-19 pandemic, and I'm sure that probably hinders some of the work of traveling back and forth to other things. So how did you, what was the, how did you handle that? I know there's so many different ways people just be like, oh, I did this, I just online, but how did that make you feel? Did you feel like, oh my goodness, I won't be able to do anything? Or what will some ways as a business entrepreneur that was in your favor to make you, still strive in what you do?
I honestly appreciated slowing down. Being a single mom, and then having to take her to school every day and the things, and then also caretaking for my brother, I appreciated having the opportunity to say, I'm going to slow down. I'm now forced. I think a lot of us are so used to the hustle and bustle, which is not necessarily a healthy lifestyle, but it's what's created the structure and what's created within America. There's other countries that actually value your well-being and value your health, that allow for you to, cook, have time to cook every day.
I know.
Have time to, instead of, throwing something in the microwave for the kids, or, eating out, or you actually have time to cook. You actually have time to read something, versus just scrolling on social media during the one moment you have to breathe. I valued not having to drive and take my daughter to school every day. I was like, I'm tired of these Zoom classes that you're in every 5 minutes, but I do appreciate not having to take you to school. And it may sound crazy, but I definitely needed the time to slow down. And so I looked for ways in which I could do that. And being a single mom, it allowed me to connect with my daughter a little bit more besides like, okay, time to wake, besides all the instructions that we throw at our children, like time to wake up, time to eat, go take a bath, go, okay, go do your homework. All right, it's time for bed. We had moments where we can just color, together. Or I could say, you would say, all right, you don't really need to go to that Zoom class. I'm like, you're going to the next grade. You're only in third grade. You know what I mean? I'm gonna.
I was gonna ask you, how old is your daughter?
She's 9.
Okay.
She's 9. Yeah. And I think that I even told friends that were struggling with all of the Zoom calls that were happening for children. I was just like, don't go. Take a day for yourself. There's a pandemic outside. Like, what the hell? Like, slow down.
It gets overwhelming.
Slow down and really take care of ourselves. As Black women, we have higher rates of mortality when it comes to childbirth, of all other different types of health issues, and we carry the weight of our community, as healers and caretakers. And so I just was like, I'm going to slow down, and I'm going to take this time to slow down, because who knows when we'll get it again.
Exactly. I mean, that's duly needed. Like, the fact that you said that, I mean, obviously people would think differ. Like, for me, I'm also a single mom, and my son's 2.5. So,
ooh, yeah, that's a little different. My daughter still went to her dad's house, so I got to throw that in there. My daughter, we switched over weeks, and so I did have the week where I could say, all right, I have this time when I don't have a child, which I very much appreciated, and which I think everyone needs. So all of the parents, I'm gonna just throw that in there too, for the parents that just had to be with, I was like, I have parents with like 3 kids, and then little boys are very different than little girls. And so I would say, like, whatever you are doing to survive this period, like, it's okay. If you gotta lock your kid out the room for like 5 minutes, it's like, look, just give me 5 minutes.
Sometimes that hurts. I can't really run anywhere, but it's like, at the same time, it's like you want your children to know what you do, so they can, in a way, kind of carry that little trait. And that's the way I see my son. Like, see, mommy's busy. These are the things that she's into. So how can you play a part within this?
Yep.
So I'm like, and then with working from home professionally with my other hat, it's like the Zoom calls, like you were talking about, the numerous times you got to take out. And then I actually started putting a schedule on my phone to say, okay, this is time we wake up, lunchtime, nap time. And it's a lot. So, find ways to try to digress, especially as women, and, having maybe like a support system. I have a number of like sisters that, they created like a Roxbury Moms group, thanks to Marissa Laus. And then another friend of mine, Tammy, who created like a moms group. And, it's very helpful just to see and channel what everybody's doing and find a way how we can make ourselves better. And, resources like this. So. Exactly.
And know that whatever you're doing is good enough. I think that we are extremely, especially when we're educated, we're hard on ourselves. And so we feel like, oh, I thought I was going to, have him reading every day or writing every day, or I thought I would have the time to just create this amazing structure and be the teacher, mom, and all of these other hats. And then if it doesn't play out that way, know that that is also okay. Yeah.
Yes, that is okay. Now it's afternoon. It's okay. Because we need that. We need to take it. I mean, what would be your biggest challenge through all this? Like, just handling being a mom and still educating in your own way, but still handling a foundation.
Is the exhaustion. I think being tired is one of the biggest challenges, because you want to have your A game all the time and be your best self, the best version of yourself, every single time. And I find that being tired is one of the biggest challenges. And I try to cope with that by understanding that this is a certain chapter in my life. You know, nothing is set to be the same way, you know, forever. And and really just remind, like, I'm tired right now. I'm gonna figure out different ways in which I can find different supports to allow for more sleep to happen, you know, and work towards those, you know, but not just kind of stay in this like, oh my God, you know, this is overwhelming. I'm stuck. Not kind of stay in that space, but switch that to a more goal oriented, where you kind of reflect like, okay, what are the barriers? Okay, how can we chip away at one of those barriers so that things can be a little bit more easier.
Great. And then this also segues like, oh, what's your greatest accomplishment? I mean, for you to have a museum, I would like to know more about that, because that's like, that can't go anywhere. That's like a starting of the history of the Peter family. Like, how did you even pull that off? How did you guys create like a, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, that was that felt really, really good, you know, to like, we have a museum.
Right.
And so my mom left my dad when I was about 5, and he lived with a woman, had a girlfriend after my mom, who pretty much had all of the artifacts. She was there when he passed away. And then we knew a gentleman who is a businessman in Jamaica and has a lot of businesses. And kind of the three of us ended up just kind of coming up after a couple of years of
Wow.
of negotiations. And it was difficult because, in a sense, all of the artifacts are ours technically.
Mm-hmm.
You know, speaking, it's like, okay, these are mine, but these are my dad's, which makes them ours. Usually that would go to his children. But that would have taken a more negative battle, which I didn't want to put into the atmosphere. I'd rather just say it doesn't matter who they technically belong to, and having a museum where the world can see the artifacts, I knew would be a better accomplishment versus fighting over them, so that the family can technically own them versus the woman that he lived with at the time, or his girlfriend at the time. So there was this like kind of back and forth with the family, like, they should be ours. What the hell, you know? But I realized, to be able to say that we have a museum, and I knew that road was a shorter road, and a more and something that I knew would be huge. I knew that it was important to kind of swallow pride, and do what I think is for the greater good of the legacy.
Yeah, I'm glad they brought you in at a young age, because that's always the hardest thing. It's like, even like my dad, he's an African musician, but I wish he would have like thought more business minded, where it's like, okay, you know, let me bring you in as a young age, in case I, you know, age out, or I don't really know what I'm doing, or maybe you can help me the face of it. And it's just like, I'm learning more about that now as I get older. But I mean, it's amazing. I mean, especially that you are also an advocate for the cannabis industry. Like, do you guys have any dispensaries yet? Like,
no, I was the honorary first customer of the first Black-owned dispensary in Boston.
Oh wow.
And so Pure Oasis, which opened up in Grove Hall. Yeah. Yeah, so they invited me to be their honorary first customer. I actually grew up a couple of blocks from there, so that was really, really cool. So we don't have any dispensaries per se at the moment, but we are looking to launch our own cannabis brand, starting with CBD, because that's something that is I've realized is a lot easier, because it's legal on a federal level. And then as the industry kind of evolves, finding the right time to get into the THC side of things. And so our brand gives 10% of net gross to the Peter Tosh Foundation. Awesome. And so it's really, and which is about pretty much advocating for some of my father's core values. One of them is the foundation, which is just carrying on the legacy. The other one is Justice for Jawara. and I still haven't really talked about his story in depth, but helping to support criminal justice reform. But also there's an initiative that's just helping to donate towards his healthcare, because we take on a brunt of the expenses as the family. We also have the Legalize It initiative out of the foundation, and that's all about educating people about the industry, about the plant, about its capabilities for wellness, and also getting to helping to get the industry a lot more diverse. So we partner with different organizations like the Last Prisoner Project and Minorities for Medical Marijuana, who do amazing work within the space for equity within the industry. We also have my father was a huge Pan-Africanist, and so we have a global community initiative, and that's geared at looking towards different partnerships across the globe, but at the core, Africa and Jamaica, to just do small projects and build up different parts, different communities. And lastly is the Can't Blame the Youth initiative, and these initiatives are all named after my father's songs. Can't Blame the Youth is really about just connecting with the younger generation and focusing on Pan-Africanism and wellness of the mind, body, and spirit through my father's music and messages and education, history education as well.
That's beautiful. I definitely see a dispensary coming in your favor in the long run. Especially, this is good because we were talking about earlier offline about Martha's Vineyard. I was going to ask you, like, is there a dispensary here in Martha's Vineyard? Like, I can see the labeling of Peter Tosh everywhere. And I think, as I remember in images of pictures, like he created like the biggest, fattest blunts.
Yeah.
Smoke and like, just like the picture, how it looks that people would just share. It was just like amazing. I was just like, how the hell do you even get your mouth wrapped around that?
Yeah, he actually performed at the very same Hot Tin Roof, I think it is, or Red Tin Roof, the same venue that my brother performed at in Martha's Vineyard. And then there's a photographer that is based in Martha's Vineyard called Peter Simon, who has taken some iconic photos of my dad as well. And so it's definitely been something that has been in the back of my mind, and Martha's Vineyard would be a great place to have.
And the bag out here, trust and believe.
Oh yeah.
Once we get back to normal with the whole COVID thing, trust me, I'll come work for you for the weekend.
Exactly. And another thing is that it's needed on the island because during the off season, although the population of Martha's Vineyard goes from about 10,000 people in the off season, and I read this a few years ago, so it's probably changed a little bit, but to about 100,000 in the summertime. And so Martha's Vineyard actually had they go through a lot of depression actually during the off season. My mom, she loves the slow time, but many people miss it. They go through kind of missing connecting with people during that time. And so I think a dispensary can really serve, that community particularly really well. So it's actually
I'm sure you're aware of Mr. Donovan's, right? That does his little shop by Nancy's.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so. Oh my goodness, his line, he sells the best drinks. My mother knows him personally. She always cuts the line. She's like, Donovan, what's up?
But man, it's like, it's not the same. It's like, I'm like, where's Donovan? He's not here. And it's just like, yeah, he's like, I don't know what the situation is, but it's not a different feel. Like, this is probably the second time I've come to the Vineyard where he's not behind the bar. And I see that he started to open up a little bit to have other people take over, but it's just not the same.
It's not the same. Yeah, he was there last year, but he wasn't there the year before, and it was one of the issues with Trump and these really strict immigration regulations is that it's really having a major effect on all of the tourism locations, places like Six Flags or ski resorts. Martha's Vineyard in particular is all operated or by immigrants.
Right.
Any store you go into, any store you go into, they're not from here. They're from, Istanbul. A lot of Jamaicans are on the island.
Yep.
A lot of just different immigrants, and so those, communities and those opportunities for business owners really take a hit because of our current immigration policies. And Donovan is pretty much an example of how it ends up affecting people. And I know that now with COVID, he just can't travel. He doesn't live on Martha's Vineyard. He comes and makes a killing during his prime time and then goes back home. So,
yeah. I definitely hear that. It's a great way of looking at and then preparing yourself for what could happen. So now I hope a lot of folks are like, okay, now how do I prepare myself so when something does happen again, like I could be able to still flourish. So now, I don't know, maybe Johnny will probably have to come up with another plan. So if he does want to come out here, or just maybe franchise, I think it's time for him to expand a little bit more other than just MV,
Exactly.
But that's just my
right. There's nothing like it though. That experience on Martha's Vineyard, it's really hard to duplicate in other places. This is special, special experience. But I would agree. I know that he has, like you said, he has had different people work there in the past, and so it's about understanding how to be adaptable, to change, and being able, when you hit with the left, you say, all right, I guess I got to go right, and just adapt and not kind of curve under the obstacles.
Most definitely. And yeah, so we have about like maybe 10 more minutes or so before we close, but I did want to tap more into the story about your brother, because I know this whole thing about this police brutality in Massachusetts and across the states is like boggling. And you would think, because of all these protests that we have coming up or going on at the moment, that some of the policies would change. They are changing little by little, but it's like some of these officers are forgetting what's going on. But I just want to know how that derived you and your power, especially for your brother. Like, is he, where is he at now? Like, would he be able to perform, or, like what exercise is making him back to his?
Yeah. Well, his story is in 2013, he was arrested on Father's Day weekend for cannabis possession in New Jersey. And he doesn't live there. He was out there at the time, and he didn't have a hearing until September of that year. So he was locked up in jail for 3 months without a hearing, and which wouldn't happen in Massachusetts. But the place that he was locked up really has a prison economy, so they're always just trying to increase their numbers. Once the family drove down to the hearing to find out that he was facing 20 years, to hear the prosecutor say that they were offering a 20-year sentence for cannabis, where certain people in certain parts of the country were making money off of it. They still were looking to kind of lock people up for the plant. In December of that year, he made bail, and then went back and forth from 2013 all the way up to 2016. Went back and forth to New Jersey for pretrial motions. They kept saying that, this is the best you can offer, we can have first. And then they lowered it down to like 15 years. And it was like, you got to kind of convince him to take the plea deal, and then lowered it down to 10. And he was torn because of, my father wrote the iconic song, Legalize It, who has been an activist, an ambassador for the legalization of the plant. And on one hand, you want to fight the system, and really fight for what you believe in. My father is a father of four. He's, an activist, my brother, a Rastafarian. And you feel like you have the right, to consume a plant at the end of the day. And so But at the same time, he didn't want to be made an example of. And so eventually, in 2016, he decided to take a plea at the end of 2016. And he was expecting it to, I think it was a plea of 5 years. But in conversations with the attorney, they were like, hopefully you can only serve 1 year and maybe get some time served and maybe do like a year and a half or 6 months or so. And he turned himself in January of 2017 and was in Bergen County Jail for a month and a half before being attacked by another inmate. He suffered a traumatic brain injury and still to this day is unable to do anything with intent. He needs 24-hour care. I have nurses that come in. I also have personal care attendants that help out, and so he can't walk, talk, or do anything with intent at this point since 2017. And so that had spawned the Justice for Jawara campaign and initiative, really to share his story, to understand how dangerous our current criminal justice system is. But he also shared that he was locked up with a 17-year-old who had like an ounce of weed, who couldn't make $150 bail. And so here is this criminal justice system that continued to penalize and really fail so many people and so many families. And so, I continue to share a story, and that's kind of the situation that exists right now. And I've shared his story through different organizations and different platforms, and that's the prime focus for us right now.
Thank you. I really appreciate you sharing that story. The story needs to be heard over and over. I mean, I know in different countries from our states is different, but right now it's weird. As we're in this era, change is coming and it's gonna get rough until we actually get better. And I think that's just the way it has to be. And unfortunately for your brother's situation, I give praise to God to make sure he's be able to recover and come back to normal. But even that term right there is scary. The fact that he's alive and blessed, and he has family like you to help support and make sure that he can see the better life of what he's living for. I give that honor to you, because that is hard. That is hard, but to take that in right there. But and my love, as we're about to, end, this was an awesome conversation. I just appreciate you. Like, I didn't even look at the time. I'm like, oh my goodness, we've been conversating like an hour. This is awesome. And I am so appreciative that you took the time to speak with me and talk with me. But do you have anything that's upcoming? Anything that people need to know about, projects you're working on? Please share to the community what that is, so I can help support you in that.
The next engagement I have is a MPP summit. It's a virtual summit, marijuana policy project summit. That's happening. And then I also have MP Unpacked, another cannabis summit that I'll just be speaking on and kind of on panels talking about diversity and equity within the cannabis space.
Awesome.
And so just continuing the work, continuing to share my brother's story, and looking for different opportunities. We are also looking to send a note or address the UN as well. We're crossing our fingers that we'll have the opportunity to share my brother's story with the United Nations. And so,
wow,
that's
some great news. Thank you. Please, and if you just share that with me, I will put it on my page. Just feel free to share that. But this is wonderful, and thank you all for tuning in this afternoon on this beautiful Sunday, right after our not celebrating Independence Day. But but this is something that we're starting, and I appreciate you, and you're also helping me grow as an entrepreneur and in my brand. So guys, Best of Me web series, this is what it's about, where I'm going to be reaching out, having conversations with lovely individuals as Niambe, McIntosh, and talking about stories about how we make ourselves great and to share with you guys so you guys can feel the greatness. So thank you. And we are out.